is the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Village of Vernon Hills, and we need to start with a roll call, please.
Chairman Morris,
Here.
Commissioner Baloo, Commissioner Cotton,
Here.
Commissioner Hesder,
Here.
Commissioner Heidner,
Here.
Commissioner Mulcrone,
Here.
Commissioner Groag.
Here.
Okay. This evening, we have consideration of the architectural review for the Woodland Chase subdivision. So I see that there's a PowerPoint that has begun. So who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioner this evening?
That would be me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Just as a brief kind of maybe reminder, this appeared back before the Planning and Zoning Commission several times in the spring. During that time, the findings and recommendations were for approval, but a condition of approval was for architecture to come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for additional review. It has appeared once before the Committee of the Whole. However, no action was taken as the committee tabled it until a builder had been decided, which it has been with Pulte Homes.
Okay. All right. You are on.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Rick Swanson. I'm president of RM Swanson Architects in Lake Forest. I have with me this evening Rob Eric and Mark Mastroianni, both with Pulte. I'm pleased to report that we've selected Pulte as our builder partner for this project. And as you may recall, we were a little apprehensive to make any commitments architecturally initially during our Plan Commission approval, and agreed that it would be appropriate for us to come back once we've established what that would be and get approval, frankly, from the Plan Commission so we can complete that process. I'm very pleased to report that collaboration has been very productive. We're working, by the way, Rob Eric is Pulte's chief architect, and Mark Mastroianni is their land acquisition expert. And we worked very well together in terms of establishing an architectural vernacular that was embraced essentially what we presented to this board and to the village board initially in our informational presentation over a year and a half ago. So if I may, I'd like to just kind of go through my presentation. Architecturally, the current trend, as I'm sure all of you know, is to do smaller houses with higher quality amenities. Homes in this development will average between 3,200 and 3,800 square feet. They will have 2- and 3-car garages. The third car will be mostly in a tandem format. The proposed homes will be designed in traditional styles that embrace the historically correct vernaculars, and they would include craftsman style or arts and crafts, shingle style, New England farmhouse. The aesthetic character of the neighborhood will be cohesive and strictly controlled through design covenants, meaning we'll have some repeat of home styles because, of course, these are designed to, the floor plans and so forth are designed to be reused, but there won't be an exact replica of the house within the general vicinity of another home. These include careful assemblage of building mass to provide a coherent and well-balanced facade on each of the 4 elevations of any given home. Historically correct design elements, appropriate use and placement of windows on each elevation, consistent use of exterior materials with logical termination of masonry materials to avoid the quote-unquote Hollywood facade. Restrict repeating of homes to avoid monotony. These are the homes that we presented to this board and to the village board to a certain extent in our informational presentation, just to give everyone a sense of the direction we wanted to take with this development. And I wanted to use these as a point of reference in presenting the homes that we do intend to build in the development. Again, these are other examples of the homes that we presented. This is a rendering that we showed to show the mass and scale of the homes and the integrity of the design and materials that would be used. These are the proposed architectural designs. The first is the bridge view model. This is an arts and crafts style, a craftsman, depending on how one looks at it. It will have shingles on the wall, some use of horizontal siding, We're using LP board. I know the plan says cementitious material, but the LP is what we're using. It's still a green technology that is typically used for this kind of home. Corner boards will be of the same kind of material. We'll use urethane brackets, which are true to the style. The color palettes and combinations will be true to the style of architecture. And the nice thing about these styles that we're presenting tonight is there are a lot of opportunity for you to mix and match and change it up. So you can virtually have a house that's very similar, but by simply changing some of the window configurations and the colors and so forth, you can significantly change the look of the house. In this case, it has a covered porch, front load 2-car garage. This particular house has a tandem garage in the back. We do have brick in this particular design, but that doesn't mean we couldn't use a stone veneer. The columns in front are true to this style. And the roof will be a architectural laminate asphalt roof. And by the way, that's fairly typical of all the homes. And lastly, the garage doors will be the carriage style. They won't be just the panel doors that you see on a lot of production homes. This will be a fiberglass overhead door, so it'll have character. As I indicated earlier, careful attention was paid to making sure all 4 elevations were consistent in terms of mass, scale, and balance, frankly. You'll note that we lined up windows. We tried to personalize the gable elements. We stayed true to a lot of the design elements on all 4 elevations. There's going to be a number of opportunities for us to mix and match it, but the point we're trying to express here is that if we do have masonry or a material continuing around, it won't come to a stop on just the face. It'll return back into a wall, which is, I think, a pet peeve of a lot of communities. And frankly, of mine. We try to keep the roof pitches consistent on all 4 elevations. I think you'll see that is absolutely the case here. We do have a lower pitch roof on in this case, on the porch, but that's true to this style. I mean, it's very common to have that kind of thing. This is the farmhouse style. We would have clapboard siding. Again, the LP fascia soffit. In this case, we're using a vertical board, again, to embrace the farmhouse style. This has a bay window. It has brick. Again, the asphalt steel tab shingles. But again, different style. Once again, you can see that there's attention paid to making sure all 4 elevations have some consistent articulation. In this case, we're using double hung windows. And then this is the shingle version of the bridge view. Again, the shingle style wall material, in this case a covered porch. Once again, as you can see, we're using stone veneer on this. It'll be real stone, not the paste on stone. And again, I could bore you with this, but they're essentially going to follow the same protocol on each design. This is the arts and crafts version of the Melrose design that we did. And again, it's a different house, different floor plan. Again, the idea is to mix and match and change it up so that you don't have the same houses being repeated over and over. Once again, we followed exactly the same protocol in terms of making sure all 4 elevations have some interest and articulation. In many cases, you'll never see the sides of these houses, but in many cases, you will see not only the sides, but you'll see the rear elevations to a certain extent. One point I do want to make, and staff asked me to do, we just didn't have time to do it. In some of the lots will have a English basement design. In other words, and I'll use the mouse to point it out. Let's just use this house as an example. This would drop down about 4 feet in the back here, and there would likely be some kind of a deck of some kind with that grade change to create a usable space down below. And of course, the grade would drop from here and then pitch down to that point. I can provide that for you. It's a relatively simple thing to do. We just didn't have time to do it, but I know that was of particular concern to our neighbors to the south. So I wanted to let you know that we are sensitive to that. But I will tell you that when we do show that, we will have windows down below here that will line up with the windows above they will down below. So we'll follow the same procedure in terms of lining up and providing an appropriate massing of the windows. This is the farmhouse version of that house. In this case, we used a fieldstone covered porch, and as I stated earlier, we remain consistent with the pitch of the roof. We're not putting a 5 or 6/12 pitch on the main roof and putting the steeper pitches in the front. We're following the same process on all 4 elevations. Same here. Again, you'll note that the masonry goes around the side of the garage and returns back into the wall. This is the shingle version of that. Same thing, brick in this case. We could have easily used stone. We could use any color. We can use any combination of materials. This is the arts and crafts version of the Willwood design. One point I want to make with this particular house, we're not going to use any stucco or ephes in this development at all. So while this house shows stucco or ephes, it'll be a shingle or a siding material. Again, careful consideration of all 4 facades. In this case, a mix of vertical siding in the gables. We would likely substitute the stucco for shingles in this case. Farmhouse style for the same house. Covered porch. Tried to put some arches in. Tried to break it up a little bit. The idea is to create and provide historically correct detailing. By the way, these would have aluminum gutters and downspouts. And then finally, the shingle style version of that, in this case, sort of a wash shingle. I could stand here all day and talk about color combinations, but there's so many. I just wanted to give you an example of those that would be used in this development. And then finally, I felt it was appropriate to show you how these houses might relate to each other. These are the actual footprints of the proposed houses. And we do propose to have approximately 6 to 7 different models with 3 and perhaps possibly even 4 different facades for each. What we really, rather than stand here all night showing you, 20, 30 houses, we thought we'd at least give you a sense of the direction we're taking and the care we're taking to make sure that the houses are designed appropriately. The point I'm making is that while I show 3 houses in this case, there'll be significantly more options to the buyers for this development. I also wanted to reflect what will be required of us as we develop this property, and that is that we would have parkway trees, of course, but we would be required to plant 1 tree in the front and 1 tree in the back. My guess is we're going to see more than that, but at the very least, we'll be required to reclaim all of this by planting trees. And that concludes my presentation, gentlemen. I'm ready to answer any questions you might have for us, my builder partners and I.
Anybody? Okay.
So you just mentioned you're going to have more plans than these? More
Yes.
elevations?
Yes.
So how are we approving these if there's more?
The elevations are going to change?
No, plans with elevations?
No.
The architectural styles will be the same. We'll have different floor plans and we'll accommodate elevations for them. What I can offer you is we are going to do other plans. If this board feels it's necessary for us to come back, what we're trying to do is try to help get a sense of, are we heading in the right direction, I guess, with what we're doing. If you like the direction we're taking and you feel it's appropriate for us to come back, my suggestion would be as we come back for more, we leave it to staff to review the drawings, and if they have an issue with anything, we'd be required to come back for approval on that design as we move through this process. I don't think it's going to be an issue for us to follow the same procedure. If you're happy with what you see, I can assure you that that process will continue as we do the other homes. By way of example, we're working on a ranch-style house right now, and they'll have an option for maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms on the second floor, but it's master bedrooms on the first floor. And that will have a completely different kind of look and feel, but the architectural style and quality would remain the same. So there's going to be, you can either take a leap of faith and trust that we're going to continue to develop designs that are equally as attractive or not attractive, depending on your opinion. And if you do, and you believe that, then it would be incumbent upon us, as we develop other designs, to come back and make sure that they're approved by the village. Frankly, I was anticipating that anyways. But I think for our purposes, we want to give this board and the village board comfort that we are sincere about our desire to maintain a certain level of integrity for the design of this development. And I know that was a concern of yours, a particular concern of yours.
Okay. A few more, I have a few more, just materials. So you mentioned the field stone and the masonry stone, that's a full depth, that's not adhered?
Right,
Okay.
full depth.
Okay. Some of the columns are called out as urethane and some are called out as fiberglass. I guess I'm just not familiar with urethane
And
columns.
actually, they are fiberglass. The columns are fiberglass. I have used a urethane column, but most of the urethane that I see is usually like the brackets and so forth. So
Right.
this is what happens when you have an intern do the,
So I figured.
yeah.
And then
It's also good to be able to blame somebody else.
some of the houses show a masonry chimney chase and some show a frame.
That's a good question. That's actually a very good comment. The reality of this particular project and reality of the industry is that we're doing a lot more of the direct vent fireplaces. So while we did show it, we wanted to show you how we would approach it if a chimney was installed, but it's unlikely that we'll have many chimneys at all, and if they are, there'll be stacks coming out of the wall or the roof. And in fact, on one of the designs, well, I guess it could be true of any of the designs, but let me just show one by example. I believe it's this one. If you take this one by example, this chimney, it's likely there won't be a chimney at all, and there'll be a window here. That's actually the way Pulte has designed it, candidly. But if they were to put a chimney and they wanted a masonry chimney, it would have to be this. So we're trying to show all of the options, because it's impossible to show every option. But it's important for us to show that we want to make sure we don't want wood chimneys coming out of the roof, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We'd rather put a direct vent in, which is the more desirable option these days.
You mentioned with like walkouts and lookouts, the grade dropping. Are you going to keep the masonry table where it's at or drop it as the grade drops?
Well, it depends on how we approach it. It's likely we would probably keep it where it's at, but however we do it, it'll be balanced and it'll be appropriate. So if we drop it, you almost question why you would even have it at that point, because nobody's ever going to see it. It's not there. But we would maintain some kind of masonry at that point. So it's a function of what is appropriate in terms of where that rests. It might be above that window line. It might be below the window line. But every house is going to be different.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I'm not familiar with machine cut shingles. What would that look like? Is it going to look like a shingle?
It actually does, and I have to say that, and we do have Rob Eric tonight, who is their not only their chief architect, but he's also their purchase expert internally. To answer your question, it's an LP material. It's a synthetic material. My issue with the shingles is that many times, and I think you've seen this, they don't look like shingles. They look like fake material. So we tend to push to do real cedar shingles. If you want to stay true to the style, you stay with a machine cut, which is like it's a thinner cut of the material. It's more consistent in shape. It's more like what you would see in a real shingle home or a real craftsman home. Whereas the others are thicker and they seem to be staggered and they don't look real. So we wanted to use something that looked like the real thing and didn't require maintenance. And we found it. We're very pleased with the result.
So it doesn't require maintenance?
Does not, no, it's a pre-finished material.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I thought these elevations had great balance. I thought they looked great.
Thank you.
I was very happy with the overall presentation of these houses. The way you worked with all four elevations, I thought that they were very handsome.
Thank you.
And I could see how, the multitude of color options, you have with all these different materials. I really liked them. There's going to be one question that I always have, and there's only a handful of these houses that do have front porches. And what's the depth of those front porches now that you're working with?
Minimum 5 feet, some as much as 6 or 7 feet.
Yeah, see, in some of those, the ones that have front porches, I really would like to see if you could work it in there that those are at least 8 to 10 feet front porches, so that people could actually put a table on them, 2 big chairs with a table, and sit comfortably on the front porch. It's not a lot of them. It's just on the handful that do have those front porches. I know that would alter roof lines in that one area.
I was going there. You're right. Let's put it this way. As an architect, it's our job to explore all the options, and clearly, we will definitely do that. I mean, I guess all I can offer you is that we have a certain amount of space to work with, and you're absolutely correct. For every action, there's a reaction. So if we pull that forward, it's gonna create another issue. Having said all of that, we'll certainly look at that we'll try to find a creative way to solve that issue.
These are, and it's not on all of them. It's on the ones that have the overhang over the front window, and
Right.
where they do have a place for.
I understand.
Because if people are going to want that style, if they're going to want the front porch, they may want to use it. Other than that, I like the way you wrapped the masonry, or your application of masonry around the rear elevation, even though it wasn't a great deal, it was suitable. And I can see how those applications where it will slope away, there will be more masonry in some of those options that would appear above grade. So I really did like them. I thought this was a good carryover. Now, that being said, do you have buy-in from the builder that they are literally going to follow this design style, these design styles? They're gonna do it?
Yes, most definitely. As a matter of fact, when Rick came, and we've collaborated since day one on all these are our plans. We sat down and designed the elevations together, the use of the materials, the massing on the four sides. So yes, very firmly that these are going to be applied.
Thank you. I don't need to beat a dead horse then, because the whole issue is, you look at these things, and it takes a while, at least for this commissioner, to like something, and then once I do feel that it's reached that level that we were looking for, I want to make sure that it gets executed. So
Yeah, I will tell you, to Pulte's credit, it's no surprise, we interviewed a lot of builders, qualified builders. And we selected Pulte because of their willingness to keep an open mind and work with us. They understood, they watched what we did, they reviewed our materials, probably more than anybody else. And they knew what they were getting into when we started this. And that was important to me in particular, because clearly we had already made representations in terms of the direction that we wanted to take. The reason we're here is not because I think there was lack of confidence in our ability to do it. It was that there was no assurance at the time that the person who was going to be, the builder that was going to be our partner, was going to implement that. So to your point, I give them a tremendous amount of credit for stepping up and doing that. I will tell you that I've worked with production, no offense, builder groups, nationals before, and they they tend to be very rigid in terms of how they approach this. To their credit, they've been very respectful of the vision that Vernon Hills has, and more importantly, the vision I have, because I share the vision that Vernon Hills has. So,
I just want to reiterate what Mr. Hesner said in his question to Pulte. I think the elevations are great. There's a lot of, good scale, proportion, massing, attention to detail.
thank you.
And they're very well done. And my one concern was going to be the execution of all these details, like just the way you've drawn them, with how the column interacts with the header beam on some of the houses with the different overhangs, and they're very well done. I just want to make sure that that's how they'll be built as presented. So
I have every confidence that we will. I have been retained by Pulte, and they're working with us. Now, they'll be preparing their own architectural drawings, as they should, but we're consulting to make sure that, these details are implemented. So I feel very good about it.
From a staff level, I mean, we're going to be taking these plans and seeing the plans they submit at the time of building permit, and we're going to be reviewing it elevation by elevation, and certainly, if the commission wants to be involved in that as part of that, we certainly can schedule time to allow for that, because we certainly are committed to making sure that the product that's being presented is in fact the product that's built.
Jeff, I can attest to that. They've been very, I can tell you that they've been very careful to review every elevation. It's not always the case, so.
are you going to have options, like screened-in porches in the rear or three-season rooms? And
Yes, we will offer all of our typical options, just as you started listing them out. We do have at the lookout walkouts, we'll have our standard deck, and that's typically anywhere from 12 to 15 feet deep by about 20 feet wide. On top of that, we would have a screened room. For any of the flat sites, it'd be a screened room with solid walls, fully roofed. Options would include, the only things that we don't typically offer is the finished basements, so unless it's a lookout or walkout condition. But a standard depth basement would not have a finish. But we offer several upper floor configurations that would change, would add additional bathrooms. Rick had already mentioned that on several of the models, we have the tandem garage. If someone did not want to have that tandem 3-car garage, we do have flex spaces where that would include an additional den or bedroom and bath in lieu of that space.
okay.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? So, for purposes of tonight, we're just looking for approval of these concepts, I guess, is the best way to put it, since there's going to be more of them.
Correct, and I guess I would maybe ask, so my recommendation would be that if you're in agreement with the elevations as proposed, that a motion be made to add these plans as an exhibit to what will be presented to the committee of the whole. The plans are dated July 21st, 2016. There's several front elevations have different dates, but all the side and rear elevations are consistent with the 21st of July. And then as it relates to additional plans as they're developed or proposed, I guess I would ask as to whether or not you would like the direction to be for those plans to appear back before the commission. Otherwise, that's certainly something that I would plan to make a condition of approval that staff is going to be a party to additional review and approval of any additional plans that will meet the vernaculars that are established in these plans. And that way we can ensure the consistency of the designs, because, I mean, that's going to be paramount to us.
Hal, seeing, and I'm really glad you pared it down to three different styles versus you had like 5 the first time.
Right. I didn't want your head to be spinning by the time it's done.
I think
so.
this is
Yeah.
plenty.
Right.
As far as the quality of the elevations that are being represented tonight, I don't see a need for them to come and present all all the different iteration, you know. They're gonna need to present it to staff anyway, so, I mean, the quality's there. I mean, this is what we were after, I believe, when we were looking at the other things. Some consistency, some quality, and this was, I think, what we were after. So, that's just one person's opinion, and I hope others.
Without voting, does anybody have any opinion either way on that?
As far as seeing what the others.
Right.
I don't think
Okay, fair enough. Okay. So then what we have is we have a standing motion on this committee or commission to recommend approval. So it would be a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary and final architectural elevations presented and dated 7/21/16 to be added as an exhibit to, what is it, the PUD?
Yeah.
To the PUD previously submitted to this, with the additional condition that additional plans would be subject to staff review for consistency as submitted by the petitioner, and unless staff makes a determination that they would need to appear back before this commission, they do not.
With
Right.
one caveat, and that is that an effort be made to project the front porch on those
Oh.
styles that have that front porch 8 to 10 feet minimum, so that people can use them.
Okay, so we'll add that as well. Okay.
So to repeat the last part, so that the effort be made to ensure that porches are,
No,
no,
it's an effort, I guess.
An effort be made to ensure that people can use them
Right. For usable
for
front
sitting,
porches.
dining,
Right.
observing the neighbors.
Would it be appropriate, would it be appropriate to say that we provide it as an option for them to have that ability? Because not everybody wants to have that deeper porch.
Yeah, fine, that's fine. But people don't necessarily, I mean, these aren't gonna be one-person homes, so, you know, the next
Right.
person might,
Right.
I just want to,
I'm just trying to deal with it as we're sort of dealing with it, that's all.
yeah, you know what, I know that not everybody wants not everybody lives outside at all. You know, a lot of people just live inside. They just walk through the front door and that's it. They like what their house looks like and they walk through the front door.
And that's particularly true with today's society.
Yeah, but there aren't that many of these in the examples that you provided that actually have an opportunity for
No,
them.
we agree, but we are coming in with other designs, and we just,
So that,
yeah.
so they could also pick the other one that just has the front step, you know, just was,
Right, exactly. All right. I just want to make sure we put everything on the table so that there's no misunderstanding, that's all.
Okay, we'll add that. Okay, we need a second for that, please?
Second?
Need a discussion? Okay, we need a roll call.
Commissioner Blue? Commissioner Cotton?
Yes.
Commissioner Hesner?
yes.
Commissioner Heidner?
Yes.
Commissioner Mulchrone?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorog?
Yes.
Chairman Morris?
Yes. Okay. Okay,
So this item will appear before the Committee of the Whole at the Village Board on the September 6th agenda. That will be review of the entire development. I believe all the plans have already been submitted, but we'll touch base and go from there.
you need,
We will need electronic copies of these guys.
do you need to correct it for consistency?
the date.
For the board? Wait, wait,
Yeah, if you could correct the front elevations on these to make sure they're all consistent with the July 21st date.
Sure.
you also have some different, we noticed, or not we, Commissioner Cotton noticed, you have the same thing, I think it's your intern, describing the same thing different ways.
Right.
Like- Yeah, all the roofs, I think. are the
Lucky me,
same, they're all
I get him
described
for another
differently.
week and a half, so I'll fix all
So
of
you
these.
should probably just make it consistent for the submission.
Yeah,
to the
that's
board.
fair enough, fair enough.
Okay,
Thank you all for your
Great.
understanding and your very productive comments this
I
evening.
did
Okay,
have
thank you.
an additional question for you,
Uh-oh.
not dealing with the architecture.
I was inches from a clean getaway.
right.
I saw some of the, I'm not sure if it was the board or the committee of the whole meeting, but trustee Cook had expressed that he had contacted some of the school districts and
That's
found
correct.
out some were amenable to changing.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, it's been very, very productive. I can't make representations tonight, but I could tell you that there is clearly a spirit of cooperation, at least on the high school side of the equation. Is that a fair assessment, Joe?
That is, Trustee Cook, myself, and Rick met with Stevenson High School, as well as the superintendents from Lincolnshire Riverwoods, as well as Hawthorne Elementary. And Stevenson has expressed a willingness, at least at a preliminary level, of having that conversation of creating a boundary change. Obviously, that's subject to their school board's approval and review, so I don't want to speak out of turn for them. And the elementary school districts also expressed a willingness to go back to their school boards to have that conversation.
You know, to Mr. Cook's credit, you know, Joe and I have been trying to do this for a year and a half, and within one meeting, we had a whole different sort of approach to this, and I have to give a lot of credit for that. So we're very happy with the direction it's going, because it's been troubling for us as well, so.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, all right. You want to talk about a new calendar?
Sure. So I brought a polling sheet. I know Lisa sent out some information, so if you responded or plan to, don't worry about looking at this, but if you want to just check a box to that tonight, you're welcome to. Just a brief kind of overview of and you guys are free to go, so you're
Right.
fine.
You're off the hook there.
So basically, we have a number of different developments that are moving forward, that it will be a very busy August, September, October, rest of the year, potentially. I'm going to try to make every effort to combine topics and meetings, but given the size of some of the developments, I also don't want there to be a feeling that we're rushing through any of the developments either. And that's really important, especially with some of these bigger developments like Pulte and the Cuneo Mansion, which is in its second round of technical review, and we're anticipating a third round of technical review, likely with a Planning and Zoning Commission date sometime in October.
Is the builder Pulte on that one too?
It is. And my hope is that they will take the progress that's been made here tonight and Rick's architectural knowledge and utilize that to incorporate many of the design elements that are here.
That's kind of why I asked that.
Because, I mean, to be blunt, Pulte's put their name on this, saying they can do it. Our expectation is that the homes next to the mansion will have the same or similar quality,
As
but not less.
high of quality.
I mean, I think honestly, it can't be less. I mean, it's if you're next to a mansion, that's literally called a mansion, it should probably have a regal vibe to it.
What's the status with the masonry ordinance for single family?
So it's still present. It's all for new homes and new construction. I can tell you that so far, I don't anticipate that being strictly followed. I believe that variations will be granted. I don't anticipate that being something that's strictly adhered to as we're to 100%. I think the plans here tonight are a good example of that. I mean, good architecture doesn't mean just brick and stone, and I think this is a good demonstration of that. And I also think it'll depend on the quality of the construction.
I agree 100%.
Other item is the Forge Club. That's a 70-unit townhome to be constructed just north of Lifetime Fitness. That's going through technical review at the moment. That will require rezoning because it's currently B1, and will require variations as it may relate to density, setbacks. It'll also require potentially a parking variation. They're proposing garages that are approximately 18 by 20 feet in dimensions, which would also be able to incorporate refuse and recycling containers. They've also proposed ones that are, I believe, 22 by 19, with 20-foot driveways for some of the homes, while others have just two-car parking with parking along the internal street. Staff is going through a number of reviews. Should be noted that the committee of the whole did not initially issue a favorable recommendation. Jacobs Homes, the developer, has decided to move forward, and I know the board members have all expressed some level of concerns as it relates to this construction, but I've also encouraged them to move forward for review by the commission and for the findings that the commission makes. Another item that was brought up earlier, H.H. Gregg is closing. In its place will be a Bob's Discount Furniture. What we've been told is that there are a number of H.H. Greggs that are closing, and it is related primarily due to their proximity to ABT, and they have just not been as successful as they would like to have been. So that will be moving forward.
In the Herald, it said October.
Is it? A couple of other items, and I'll get to a little bit more information about Regency. The Commons, that's the, that was next to Port Clinton Place. This was done pretty much just before the recession hit with the Lexington Homes, who just finished the townhome development. This Port Clinton Place planned unit development. Side Taxman has looked into constructing the remaining unbuilt apartments. We are going through technical review. They are planning to increase the density, which would require a parking variation of 1.9 spaces per unit. They would plan to be apartments instead of condominiums, and we're working through with them on architecture. It's almost the same building footprint, but they have made some modifications that are going to result in some additional review and approval by staff. In addition to that, on the September 6th Village Board agenda, at the concept review stage, River's Edge condominiums will be presented. They are looking also to construct the remaining unbuilt portion. Initially, it was approved for 80 units. Only 40 were constructed. And this is kind of a trend in the market. They're proposing to construct 60 instead of 40 apartment buildings, or apartment units. They haven't definitively said they would be condos or rental, though based on the condo market, I'm not sure it would be.
That is the development on Milwaukee. They
Correct.
built, the condo building that was built is west of the river.
Correct.
So what you're saying is those people that bought those condos now may be living next to an apartment building that has the premium space and the premium view that we heard about several years ago.
That would be correct.
All right.
They, yeah, no, you got it. They do intend to construct the exterior identical to what's been currently built, but it will take. Staff anticipates a strong pushback by the HOA.
I was going to ask that.
I would think so.
I think there's members of the park board who are residents there who will have concerns and the like.
There are.
And understandably so. So we'll stay tuned for that. That would also require a parking variation, and given the location of that particular development, I think it'll be very difficult to make that work with what they're proposing.
Right, because if you run out of parking, there's no place to go.
Right. The Depke Center, I think, is the closest.
They just all have to have really small cars, Mini Coopers.
Yeah. Other item, and I'll
Are these developments in Milwaukee going to have full access?
And so River's Edge would not. River's Edge they'd have to create a designated left turn lane into the development, as well as a right turn deceleration lane.
But they still have left out?
No,
No, they would not.
I don't think they would.
Yeah, they're right in,
Right in, right out.
right in, right out.
Oh, right in, right
They don't
out.
have a left out. They're right in, right out.
They don't now have left
Correct.
out?
No.
What about this other one, the Forge Club?
Forge Club would, we haven't heard from IDOT yet, but right now it would look as though it would be, they're constructing it in a way to allow a left out, which I've taken. It takes, I timed it. It can take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Well, but you're within 250, 300 feet of a traffic signal too.
Right.
Correct. So you won't be able to
Won't be a light.
access a light
Right.
at that location. There is also about 15 feet of additional right-of-way that may be required on the site. We haven't been told yet by the developer how that will be addressed. but certainly it's something that will be needed to be addressed prior to adoption.
Okay.
Any other questions about those items?
Any updates on Menards?
Still going through litigation. Chase Bank did appear before the village board for a concept presentation to construct on one of the outlots. They're probably about 3 to 4 weeks away from submitting for technical review. But I can't say from what they've submitted, it complies with all the setback requirements for the site. And as far as I can see, the only, no variations would be requested. The only item that would be needed to be approved is a special use for a drive-through bank. So.
Court date.
Next court date is going to be due in, I think briefs are due in September, and then more filings are then going to take place in November. We're hoping things can be settled outside the court system, but obviously, given the ongoing conversations, we're still working through it.
Wait a second, what's next week? Isn't there something next week?
Yes,
The next 2 weeks we have meetings.
So next week and then the 24th?
yes. So I kind of created basically just a roadmap, and this could be thrown away in the garbage if you'd like, so I'm definitely open to feedback. But because of just the scope of the Melody Farm development, I wanted to at least try to put something onto paper as to how we might be able to work through the plans in just kind of a structured format. That way we can make sure that there's time for each plan to be able to be discussed and addressed without feeling like we're bouncing around between different subjects. So initially, August 17th is on everyone's calendar as a date for a concept. I've recognized that I'm probably up to my shoulders in this project, just having worked with it for about a year. And, I hope I've given everyone an update as much as I can as it's moved forward. But I also want everyone to have an opportunity to meet the developers who are planning to construct this, hear about, basically what they've done, hear, what their plans are. And it's not a public hearing. No voting action would take place. I thought this would just be an opportunity to kind of.
Next week.
Yes. This would just be an opportunity to have a conversation about what the development is, what the process has been. It's required a lot of different efforts involving IDOT, Lake County, and going through all those things, just to have an understanding of kind of what's been going on to get to this point. So that's kind of the intent of the 17th, and it's certainly not supposed to be a full-blown presentation because the 24th is the public hearing, and that's the one that the public hearing notice has been given out. We want to respect the process and make sure that we're not going into anything that wouldn't need to be addressed at a public hearing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So the first item on the 24th was the thought as to looking at the site and the landscaping plans. John had the great suggestion of keep looking at the flat items first. So that's the site, the landscaping for the residential and the retail, as well as looking at the plat of subdivision. Items, just so you're aware of, as relates to variations, there's actually not a large number of variations required for the site, but they're primarily involving setbacks, building height for the residential development, and then building separation, and then a parking variation for the residential unit, since they won't have shared parking with the retail shopping center, which does meet parking requirements, so that's good. So the thought is potentially have those conversations on the 24th and go through those items, and then looking at scheduling a meeting either or and the 31st and or the 7th. And I have no strong preference. I just want to make sure that looking at everyone's availability, it does appear that everyone is available on those dates. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were moving at a pace that was not too fast, but also give you the opportunity to kind of feel like you're flowing through with the process. So with that, the thought was that on those days, we could discuss architectural elevations, both of the residential and the retail. as well as taking a look at the signage variations, which I think signage might be one of the larger items to be discussed, just based on the number of buildings that are being constructed and the variations being requested. They are looking at developing a signage criteria. So instead of trying to create individual signs for tenants they don't know yet, the thought being that they'll create kind of a sign package that people can see and go, okay, you have this space that you're able to construct a sign within, and the parameters that are involved with each one of those. So that'll be going out. And my hope is that all this will go out this week in terms of plans. So you'll see everything beginning this week, and hopefully that'll also give you extra time to review the documents. I certainly understand that you get the plans on Friday, and for development this size, to be able to then review it and digest it, to then converse 5 days later, that can be challenging. So I want to make sure you have ample time to review everything. And so that's, and then obviously this, actually approving of the special use permits would be the last items we would look to have happen. We would look to maybe have the variations approved first, including the site plan, but then in terms of the actual approvals, we want to make sure that's last. And throughout the entire process, we want to make sure we keep the public hearing open through all the meetings, because we want to make sure that there's a open, transparent process, and that if anyone shows up, in the fourth meeting, they have an opportunity to speak and it's on the record.
Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good. What is the objective of this development? To do what?
The objective that has been provided to us is that it's providing an upper level shopping experience that we do not currently have within the village. The quality of tenants that they're looking to attract and have either signed leases with or are about to have signed leases with, that they're looking to attract, are ones that, for one reason or another, have not come to the Vernon Hills market.
But just so I understand, and maybe everybody else knows this, are these destination shops, or is this a quasi-downtown shopping experience, or what is it supposed to be? That's what I don't understand.
I think, my understanding of it, and what Matt Hendy from Regency Centers has talked about all along, is that it's supposed to be a destination. This is a place where there's an open courtyard where people will want to gather, and the larger, wider sidewalks, which are, I believe they're 20 feet wide, is supposed to provide walkability where, looking at, for example, Deer Park, there's not as much walkability to it. It is an internally configured site. It is designed for individuals to travel within the site and then to, walk between stores or shops.
So this would be almost like a life, or like a Deer Park Center, meaning you drive to it and you walk within it and then you leave, because you can't really walk to it because of where its location is, right?
Well, I know they are trying to incorporate elements, especially with one particular retail tenant, of access to the trail system.
I can see that, because
But-
but where does the trail system come from? There's not
The
houses.
answer to your question is yes.
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know with Deer Park.
Thank you.
I think
Meaning
Deer
you
Park.
drive to this destination, you walk around in this destination, you get in your car and you leave this destination. Right.
I know they're trying to incorporate a lot of the West Loop into what they talk about in terms of the plans and designs. I mean, at the end of the day, we do live in the suburbs, and there's only so much biking and walking that does take place to destinations. I mean, I think that's an unfortunate reality of kind of just a lot of areas without already having a fixed downtown.
That's true, but it's the unique dynamics of this site also, in that it has the river on the east. It has two extremely busy roads, and then you've got commercial or Hollister or whatever to the north. When you look at Greg's Landing, you've got walkability to Mariano's. If you want, you can walk to the grocery store from anywhere in there if you wanted to walk far enough.
Yeah. And I think the architecture, it is definitely unique. I think it's definitely something that we have not had within the village before.
Not that you have to tell us, but do they have some retail that is interested and/or committed to this?
Yes. Yeah, and I believe they'll be listed on the plans. I don't know exactly if they have signed leases or not.
You know,
Um,
yeah, I realize you don't necessarily want to say that, but, I mean, I just want to make sure we're not going to build something that's going to be half empty.
Oh, absolutely. No, we wouldn't. Yeah, that's definitely not the goal. But, you know, as it relates to like the Deer Park example, the one thing that because I have shopped at Deer Park a number of times, what I don't like about that shopping center is that you can park and you can shop. But if you want to go to somewhere else within that center, I almost feel like you have to drive. And that's something that I think the design of this center is certainly, the goal is to not have that feeling of, okay, well, I'm going to go to Crate and Barrel, and now I'm going to go to the Gap, but I can't do that without moving my car. And that might be psychological, but it seems like in that space particularly, there isn't that same sense.
Okay.
So in terms of scheduling, I mean, I know it's a lot of meetings in a row, and I've just listed off a bunch of other meetings that may be coming up, and what I don't want to have.
That's fine.
Okay.
Looks good.
All right, so right now, I'll kind of put it in as for the 31st, and then I'll leave the 7th as kind of a placeholder in case we need it. Certainly, you know, if we do, there's no reason why we can't utilize it, or even additional meetings out further. I mean, I also want to make sure that we're getting through the plans.
Right. Okay. All right.
That was it.
Anything else, anybody? That it?
Yep.
Okay, then we have a motion to adjourn. We need a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that? We're adjourned then. Good night.
Thank you.